For Carl Sharif, getting ready seems little more than just an exercise. He's long past preparing for action. He's been a man in motion all his life.
All right.
Born Carl Dawson, the youngest of 6 children of a construction laborer, Carl grew up fast in the streets of Newark. Married at 17, father of 4 at age 22, captain of Central High's football team, anchorman on the track team. Despite an athletic scholarship, he proved too restless for college. A lot of classes since then, but he never got his degree. A lot of roads since then that led to a new religion, a new name, and a new career, politics. As a top aide to Mayor Ken Gibson, he was appointed to the school board some 3 years ago. Soon after, he was elected its president. The board pays him nothing. The mayor pays him $30,000. At age 36, Carl Sharif now occupies possibly the most responsible public position of any Muslim in this country, an especially tough position in recent months. He laid off 1,100 school employees, then waited out protests and a threatened teacher strike to emerge with an unprecedented agreement with Union Chief Carol Graves. As a follower of Islam, Sharif neither drinks nor smokes. He's a martial arts enthusiast, and like his friend Ken Gibson, he can go the distance in a 26-mile marathon. His pace leaves others breathless and curious. They can only watch and wonder as they see Carl run.
I chose the name Sharif for my son when he was born 6 years ago. His name is Rasul Sharif. Sharif is a name which, to some extent, signifies honor and signifies nobility, and also signifies the keeping of the law. I chose the name for him, did not take the name for myself until some years later. I had to make some determinations for myself, about myself, where I wanted to go, what I intended to do. These names are not to be taken lightly. They're something that you attempt to live up to, not to be taken lightly at all. Well, Islam is a sensible religion. It makes sense. It's something that can be applied to daily life. Whatever you do, there are applications that you can make from Al-Islam. It removes, for me, the contradictions of other religions. I used to, in fact, be a Christian, and at 12 years old was a Sunday school teacher, and have a family that's very involved in the Christian faith. Father's a long-time chairman of a deacon board at a local church in this community. My father hasn't evidenced a great deal of reaction. I think his position is that's what Carl wants to do, and if he wants to do that, I respect that choice. My mother, on the other hand, has an interesting kind of view. She says, well, you know, there's only one God, and no matter what you do, or no matter how you call it, it's the same God, and you just keep praying, son, and you do what's right, and everything's going to be fine. Much of the Newark Muslim community, the Ummah in Newark, is changing, and it's changing rapidly, I think. At one time, Caucasians were not permitted to participate in worship at the masjid, but that restriction was lifted, and that was the most sensational change. Our abstinence from political activity for a very long time is something else that's been changed, and political and community activity in general has been encouraged, and it's something that we have an obligation to do, pitch in, get ourselves involved in the lifeblood of the community and make the community a better place to live for everyone. the students in the school system deserving of my clearest and my best thinking, and it requires a certain amount of discipline to attempt to think clearly in an atmosphere which is sometimes almost hostile. I rely on my religion under those circumstances because it gives me the stamina that I need to do what I have to do. One of the things that's most absent in the school system today, clearly, is human communication and human concern, person for person. And there's a certain amount of moral depravity that exists in our school, which is clearly evidenced by the use of drugs, assaults on teachers, and any number of other things. Al-Islam addresses these kinds of issues clearly. It makes it clear what is forbidden and what kinds of things are permitted. And absolute respect is required in Al-Islam. And I think if you brought these kinds of things to the school, and people other than Muslims can bring those things to the school, I hasten to add. However, I think that Muslims could do a fine job in bringing that kind of atmosphere to a school, which would provide an opportunity for teachers to teach. I think if you bring to the school something that begins to develop self-control in students, so the students are not always in a position where they have to be watched. They can control themselves. They don't need an external control.
Weequahic High School was always considered to be one of the top academic high school institutions in the country. As a matter of fact, between the years of 1959 and 1964, according to a survey made by the New York Times, our graduates earned the most PhDs in the country. So we had a really true academic tradition. My name is Morris A. Britton. I am presently the acting principal at Weequahic High School. I've been placed here in a caretaker capacity during the illness of my boss, Mr. Restaino. I have been with the Newark school system since 1944.
In the beginning of the year, we had a principal change around the city. We got a new principal who didn't know the school. We didn't know him. And the school just basically fell apart.
Which the school was in utter chaos. I don't know what you've seen lately, but I mean, compared to where it was, let's say 2 months ago, this is like heaven. Because the halls, they were like rows, people just running through in droves up and down the halls. And the markings were all over the wall, graffiti was all over. You walk right by the main office, it was like a marijuana alley. You just could smell it all over the building.
The number of fires we have, if we're not having a fire, we're having a fire alarm. And you're constantly out of your class because we have to go out, come back in. And if it's not somebody pulling the fire alarm, it's somebody setting the fire.
Okay, first of all, he did a unbelievable thing. Mr. Sharif on several occasions has spoken to not only to the students in the school, but also to teachers. He's had them over at his house and everything. He lives right down the street. So he's readily available. From that respect, I'm very proud to know him. And he came in and established order in the school.
I went in to see the acting principal and talked to him about the situation here. He explained his problems. We called a meeting with the department chair people, and they indicated they wanted something done, also indicated they were willing to participate in doing that something if there were a sign that the Board of Education was serious indeed about changing conditions in this school. We had a meeting subsequent on the same day with the executive superintendent of schools, and it was decided at that point that we would come into Weequahic High School with a task force of sorts, take a look at the problems here, try and address all of the physical problems which had drawn such heavy complaint from the staff, and see if in fact that having done that, we would be in a position to change the general atmosphere of the school and then get on to discussing some educational issues.
I bought from him I'll give it to you later. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. Something I want to get.
I try to maintain a low profile in Weequahic High School because I am president of the Board of Education, and I won't be here. The superintendent, when he's here, maintains a low profile. He won't be here. The person who's been on the spot in this school and who's been doing a fine job at that is Ruth Hazelwood.
Our youngsters are craving for someone who cares for them, someone to show them that you care for them, someone to talk to, someone to bring their problems to, someone to confide in, and someone to just be close to, someone to tell them what's right and what's wrong. In fact, they are looking for discipline, almost crying out for discipline. I catch that hat on while these lights on, I'm going to hang you.
Hello, Miss Hazelwood.
Hi, sweetheart, how are you? Let's go to class. When we find that a youngster has a weapon on him, I go to him. I take him aside to himself. I ask him first if he has it. In most cases, they're very truthful. They will either say yes or no. And if they say yes, I say, would you release it to me so that I might release it to your parents so that you may not get in trouble? They will either go to the locker and give them to me, or if they have them on, I put my hand out and they put them in my hand. I have cards and money and the like. The gambling has stopped almost 100%.
Can we just sort of keep that down, if you don't mind? All right?
He is the first and only president of the Newark Board of Education that has shown an interest, a direct interest, a personal interest in the schools, the youngsters, the teachers, and the parents.
Take your hat off.
Well, I talk to disruptive students as I find them and talk to some parents. Took the list of those students, looked at their records, called parents and discussed these things with parents. I did a lot of that. Some of my staff people did some of that as well, directly. And in most cases, we found that parents were receptive. In many cases, unfortunately, sadly, we found that parents were unable to control the situation themselves. Many parents said to us, there's nothing I can do. I've challenged Muslim students in this school, though. I've challenged them to be more responsible, to not put their names up on the walls, to make sure that they challenge other students in areas of academics, start looking for those things that are intellectual and pulling students verbally away from other kinds of activities, which we all agree and know are negative. I've said to them that I see this as a responsibility that all students have, and I would hope that you would take it up.
I know Mr. Sharif very well. I'm a member of the Muslim Student Association, and there's a few other brothers in the class that are in this organization. He helped us get this organization together to build a morale at the school, to give students a feeling of self-pride in themselves, to have some kind of initiative to, just to respect the school and property. And, he's really done a lot for us.
He took his time out, to come up here from his job and to talk to us, to motivate us to go to classes and, do the right thing. So, if he take an interest in my education, hey, I like the man. I think he's wonderful.
Well, I think Mr. Sharif came in at a critical time. And I think that he did some important things because the school had reached low ed, partly from the result of the school reprogramming and the teacher layoffs, partly from what I thought was a bad plan, the asking of teachers to monitor absent teachers' classes rather than hire substitutes. This created a crisis. Also, our principal was ill, and the school lacked leadership at the top. So the task force came in and did some important things. Part of the problems came as a result of Board of Education action.
We tried to get a call for some kind of consistency, and I think that's what's really lacking in Weequahic High School right now. We have no definite written set of rules to govern the different situations. Requirements for promotion from grade to grade, a list of rules for discipline, absences, truancies, assaults, and etc. And the only consistency is that we always make our decisions on a random sample.
You seem to be a crisis reactor rather than an educational planner, one that really has time to really create politics. You find yourself constantly reacting to crisis, and I think that at times Carl gets moved to respond to the crisis and doesn't have either the time or the personality to hold back and take stock and maybe measure and evaluate all the implications of any one given action.
Many of the problems have not been solved in a permanent way. It was temporary, it was badly needed, it was helpful. But some of the permanent things that have to be done will cost money by the board, will take a long time for us to accomplish. For instance, the 200 or 300 students for whom we have no real program, who don't go to class. And I'm sure you've seen some of those youngsters in the hall. Those youngsters must be put in a different school setting because there's nothing in a large school like Weequahic High School that we can do for them.
There's the question of whether or not that stigmatizes the student, to put them off to the side and say this is a special school for disruptive children. And no matter what euphemism you use to cover that up, the students and everyone else will know the purpose of that alternative school being set up. I don't know if that's the best way to go. You may create more damage than you correct.
There was a situation, and it's really presented again in my points over here, of an assault, which was a major assault on a teacher approximately 3 years ago. I was very much shocked by the assault and everything, and I went to the principal at that time to find out what is being done about the youngster. And I found out the youngster was suspended for 3 days. The teacher was out from November through that June, didn't come back till the following September. Mr. Sharif spoke to the youngster, to the mother, and myself, and the youngster was allowed back into school. However, he was not put on any kind of daily, which is just a record of how he's doing in each one of his classes.
He wasn't watched.
He was subsequently allowed to roam the halls. He got into problems quite often again. And when the problem was pursued some more, really nothing was done.
These students run the halls, they roam the halls, they cause disruption, they have to be picked up by security forces, they have to go through the entire trauma of suspension and reinstatement, and it becomes a very repetitive process.
Well, I think when the task force leaves, including the people that's in here, are going to be in the hallways, and those that are in classes now only in class because they know that we have a special program up here and everybody wants to put on the act. But after y'all leave, the school's going to be as wild, as usual.
Please report to the main office now. Security guard aides to the main office now, please.
I think he is ambitious, and I view this as a positive quality. He's aggressive. I view this as a positive quality. I think he has a sense of commitment. He also, I perceive him as a very sensitive person to many issues that are of primary concern in a city such as Newark. Times I have found him to act rather impulsively. I think it was inappropriate for the president of the board to also try to act as acting principal on a high school.
Was the board involved at all in the decision for him to go into Weequahic? Were you aware of that?
No. The board was not involved. This was a personal decision.
Well, the board is the policy role, and I'm aware that there are charges that I've overstepped those bounds and gotten myself very involved in administrative matters. And to some extent, that's absolutely true. I have. But in the meantime, there are so many things that need to be done that if we stand around and try and have these proper distinctions of what is policy and what is administration, in some cases, I think the students lose. They suffer from it. What we should be doing is everyone getting their hands involved in this mess at any level that you can.
I think he has overstepped his bounds, and I'm grateful to him. That's exactly what we need, people who will take the actions that are extraordinary. I mean, our problems in Newark are extraordinary. The problems of public education in the cities are so horrendous that if we were to follow the process and the procedure, will continue to fail. So he mixes substance with procedure and gets the job done. Thank God, or thank Allah in his case, whatever.
Mr. Sharif is now using the Weequahic High School situation as a kind of comeback situation to some of the problems that he has been having citywide. I think that if he can prove himself that he can become an intimate part of the Weequahic High School situation and sort of get that back on the road to maybe having a full day or a successful day of school. Maybe he could prove himself again to the constituency here in Newark who parents have absolutely no faith within Mr. Sharif at this point. Yeah. I feel that it's top-level politics. It has absolutely nothing to do with who sits where. You know, it's obvious that the mayor has direct involvement in education as far as Newark is concerned. Carl Sharif, who is an aide to the mayor, I do feel as Board of Education president, is in conflict of interest.
We have a May 16th reorganization this year. The board. Yeah, well, they changed it to March 1st. For the last couple of years, but now it's been modified to May 16th again. And we should make that other appointment.
Well, the conflict of interest question has been raised on several occasions because of my closeness to the mayor. And I'm the first one to say that there is a potential conflict in what I do. Being an administrative assistant to the mayor as well as being president of the Board of Education. I don't think there's a conflict in fact in this particular case, but there is a potential conflict in those two positions. The thing that bothers me about that to some extent is that there are a lot of people who make the assumption that Mayor Gibson sits in his office and makes all educational determinations and slips me a piece of paper and then I execute these things. You know, I'm involved in implementation of the mayor's very specific orders, which is in fact not the case at all. The mayor is very helpful to me. He's helpful primarily because he's supportive. And when I say supportive, the mayor permits you to work. When I took the position on the Board of Education, there were two things he said to me. He said, there are two ways to operate an appointed Board of Education. You select people and you tell them what to do. You give them all their marching orders every day. Or you select people who you think have ability and you let them work. You give them their head. You say, go ahead and do whatever you think you have to do. He chose the latter. And I think if you talk to the board members, they will tell you that it has not been my style at all to come around arm twisting for votes. I have lobbied for votes, but arm twisting, no.
Do you see Mr. Sharif or Mr. Gibson exercising pressure on other members of the board? Are you witness to that at all?
I have not witnessed it, but have become familiar, yes, that this has happened. It hasn't happened to me, but some more members have said, you know, that they have received call. They have stated it as a matter of fact publicly. And I know that some of these, from the vibes and the rumors that you pick for board members have been happening, yes.
Calls from whom?
Both the president of the board and the mayor.
Sometimes there's a political reason for making decisions, even though the board will deny it and the mayor will deny it. Everyone will deny it except me. There's political reasons in this business for making decisions. And he had the ability to arrive at them. I didn't always agree with them, but he at least was able to arrive at a decision while others would not make a decision and let the chips fall wherever. I think that's directly related to the fact that he is an aide to the mayor, and, you know, quite possibly it's a job being a board president, even though on the books it isn't. And with the others, they really don't have to be accountable for a decision, particularly bad decisions, you know, in terms of losing their jobs. Carl Sharif considers that he has more at stake in the survival and the success and the turning around of a school system than perhaps anyone down at the board itself. I think that he may have a personal stake in it. He may have a political one. It may be just the challenge.
What is your personal agenda? Where do you see yourself? What do you see yourself doing 5, 10 years from now?
I'd like to seek elective office at some point in time. Which elective office, I don't know at this point in time, but I'd like to seek elective office. It's
Mayor of Newark?
Well, you know, people have raised that question. I remember when the mayor ran last time, there were people who were around, and some of them quite close to the mayor, I must admit, who were saying things like, well, Sharif wants to be the mayor. They even said I was running for mayor last time out. None of that's true. I don't know. I don't know if I'd like to be mayor of Newark, and I might love it, on the other hand. There's much that I see about the job which is attractive and exciting, but there's much I see about the job which is thankless, and I've learned what these thankless positions can do for you as president of the Board of Education. You know, the kind of agony that one goes through, the kind of anxiety that one constantly goes through, and this sort of cold veneer that people see. Underneath that is a living, breathing human being who hurts and who gets upset and who gets nervous and who has fears and who gets happy and does all the things that other people do. I don't know if I can do that kind of thing at that level of intensity for a long, long period of time. Mayor of Newark? I don't know. Some kind of elective office, though. I think I'd like to continue serving people if people want me to do that.
Carl Sharif makes no bones about seeking elective office. And in a town like Newark, where it often seems that the worst thing you can say about someone is that they are running for something, Sharif's candor is refreshing. Even more so is the fact that in the month we spent with him, Sharif never once requested that anything he said be off the record. On the contrary, many critics of Mr. Sharif would hardly ever speak on the record, and many others seemed too afraid to comment at all. This says a lot about Sharif's aura of influence. It may even say more about his critics. But Sharif's boss, Mayor Ken Gibson, also declined to be interviewed, apparently to avoid underscoring the fact that the school board president is still his aide. Carl Sharif celebrates communicating, talking things out. Yet, at one point in the making of this documentary, when Sharif had some concerns about our procedures, he simply never showed up for a scheduled school board meeting. A final note on Weequahic High School. How much progress will Mr. Sharif or anyone else be able to promote in a system that allows 2 burned-out classrooms to go unrepaired after 2 years?
Come on, Larry. Straight.
Yet Carl Sharif still believes there's a race to be run, a race that pits him against his own high standards. In Newark, it's a contest that should have many interested spectators.